Humans are LLMs running around on two legs.
Episode 4, Hewi.
Episode 4, wow.
Wow, it's flown so fast. That means it's a month.
It is, yeah. From the idea to episode 4, all in a month. Well done. You move like Flash Gordon.
Well, there's no, in my world, thanks to some CVS and X10 and GBBs and other acronyms, I don't need to spend much time thinking because my speed of thought is much faster. Yeah. My experiments in my head happen a lot faster. What ifs?
So the behaviour can happen faster and the results get there faster.
That's it, yeah. My favourite quote of all time is by Louis Pasteur, the French microbiologist who said, "Chance favours the prepared mind."
Yes.
What I draw from that is that if you've got a lot of things on the back burner, you've got some relationships here and you know a little bit of software there and you've got a podcast studio in South Melbourne.
Yes.
All of this comes together when chance favours the prepared mind. And the chance was when you said, yes, I am back in Melbourne.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
And I was like, well, I've got an idea. And here we are.
Here we are, yeah. No, it's great. That was the basis of military training. Got called up for national service, Vietnam and all that. Did a leadership training program. But anything can happen in battle and in war. Yep. But the prepared mind, and even the drilled prepared mind, has a lot better chance than if someone sends you a memo, kill the enemy or something.
Yeah,
like
that's
that,
right.
Which business has a lot of trouble understanding. I always say if you want to multiply your business by 10, multiply your training by 10. But, a memo from the boss and a seminar once a year and all that just doesn't prepare minds.
No, not at all. And today we're going to help prepare minds with a little bit of LLMs.
So large language models, that's the big thing with AI.
Yep.
And many of us are sort of using ChatGPT and Claude and Meta and all the others.
Yep.
Large language models. And isn't it amazing how they're very well mannered, they're very well behaved, they're very complimentary.
For now.
And you can put in, give me an essay on Versailles or write me a Shakespeare sonnet and all that, and they'll do it very well. But it's largely they have been heavily trained, mega trained with information and so on. And then they're predictive models. They can predict the next word. They can build sentences. They can do languaging, which is not the same thing as thinking. And as we understand that more, we can see some parallels with the human brain.
Yeah.
Now, not exactly the same. There's sort of like a Venn diagram. There's overlap because the human brain has a body to run as well, and emotions, and many other things that LLM doesn't have to do, and cannot do. But there is, to a very large extent, particularly in the sphere of education and the way we run business and so on, a lot of it is just languaging. It's just being able to put a sentence together and then predict the next word. And a lot of times that's confused as if it were thinking. But it's not thinking, it's languaging. Useful, but not enough.
I wonder what amount of our own brain uses that same methodology of, these are the words that I commonly put into a sentence. It's probably why we get a lot of cliche sentences.
Exactly, clichés and in sentences. I mean, one of the interesting things a lot of people have noticed, especially in the days when you watch the news on television, if you switch from Channel 9 to Channel 2 to Channel 7, it's almost the same sentences being said in the 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock news, whatever it is. It's the stuff, the zeitgeist, what's floating around is pretty much the same stuff. In one brain, it's easy to copy another brain. And so the sentences are there on the top of your mind. Someone says the word and then the rest of the sentence flows out. Now, and gossiping and all the other things, all very useful things, but it's not to be confused with thinking.
No.
Which is escaping from these things in order to come up with other things.
Now, I wonder if some people don't think as much as others because they are in that habitual, repetitive regurgitation of things that have been already told to them. They've got the language model or the sentences they have heard from the TV or the propaganda from the media.
I think the word bubble is used now.
Bubble, yeah. And they just repeat those talking points.
And often just talking to each other. If it's on TikTok or on social media, then the algorithm brings people of a sort of like mind, a like bubble together, which is why it's called a bubble. So you're basically just all clichéing each other, languaging each other, repeating the same things and nodding in agreement.
Yeah.
But that's fine. That's fine. But not to be confused with thinking, with innovation, with lateral thinking, with curiosity and creating value.
Yeah, that's right. A friend of mine back in high school, back in the possibly the late 80s actually, sorry. He used to come to school every Monday and then regurgitate all of the Simpsons quotes that he heard that week. And so very little of what he said was his own thought.
All right.
Yeah, it was.
At least he picked a good source anyway.
True. Yeah, no doubt. I'm sure you can train your Claude or your ChatGPT to talk to you as a character from The Simpsons.
Absolutely. I just before Christmas, I was messing around with ChatGPT, and I prompted it because it does come down to the prompts we do rather than just say write my essay or something.
Yeah.
And I asked it to write a 1,000-word one-act play in the style of Shakespeare.
Right.
Called Charles III, and the cast was at Balmoral Castle. There was the King and Queen, the Princess Royal, the Walesers, you know, and also the Essexes.
Right.
York had just lost all his titles and everything, and the discussion was, should they do the same to Sussex? And I pressed the button, and 34 seconds later, out came this, I mean, it wasn't Shakespeare, but it could have been. But, and when you think of it, I mean, I've read my share of Shakespeare, but it's read everything that ever could possibly have been written about Shakespeare, every word Shakespeare wrote, every commentary, every movie script, plus all the contemporary stuff about, you know, Meghan and Harry, and was able to spit it out.
In such a short amount of time as well.
Incredible.
Yeah.
But it did all that on predictive word building, sentence building.
Yeah.
There was no thinking of any kind involved.
Yeah. Although we really don't. Do we actually know what thinking is? I mean, we talk about the outcome of what thinking can become, which is creative and escape and looking for a better view of the situation. But the actual physiological movement of dopamine across a membrane from memories.
Yes. Well, yeah. I mean, we yes, we do. Well, we can have definitions of thinking. Our definition in the School of Thinking is to using intelligence to get things done.
Yep.
Just like you talked about as we opened up the session. You know, how you use your thinking to get things done, not just to sit and contemplate and, you know. But there can be other definitions. But we do know a lot now through neuroscience. You know, inside the head there is nothing but neurons.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we used to think, oh, I tell my brain what to do. No. Our brain tells us. And there's a lot of doubt as to whether there is even an us or a me or an I or a pronoun. No, they're useful, but whether they exist. So there's nothing in the brain but neurons and neurotransmitters, as you mentioned, to talk across membranes. And finding out how that works more and more increasingly is what neuroscience is about.
Yeah.
What that means, how it affects behavior, how it affects other brains.
So as a parent, I'm thinking about my child, and we talk about sort of how childhood generates a lot of those connections in the brain.
Yes.
And then obviously the more experiences that one has as a child, and that might be traveling to Disneyland as a kid or having older siblings that bash them up or, you know, maybe a terrible incident like the dog dying, for example.
Yes.
All of that creates a kind of language base from which our human LLMs is generated.
Sure, absolutely. It wires the brain, and it's the wiring of the brain, the way information goes down that neuron, that pathway rather than another one, is what produces thoughts, and those thoughts are built upon, and they're also linked in with the various neurotransmitters, dopamine, oxytocin, and all the others. And later experiences and so on are added onto that, but it's all part of it. It doesn't unhappen. It's there. And childhood, even in the womb, experience in the womb. Imagine your brain being formed in the womb of a mother in Gaza right now compared to your brain being formed in a mother in Armidale.
Yeah.
So all of that, just to say, so that early childhood, later childhood, adolescence, right up until now, the smell that might be in the environment, what you had for breakfast, the hormones, what sort of life you've had in the last few months. Has it been a stressful life? Has it been blah, blah, blah? All of which goes up at any particular moment to give you your brain at that moment, and then what comes out of it.
Yeah. Smell you mentioned there, that's interesting. My wife's Chinese. She grew up in China.
Yes.
We're similar. We're very similar age. Same. I won't say how old I am because that will give it away how old she is in case she's listening.
Nice try.
And yeah, right. And we have very different smells because she grew up with a set of smell buds or, I don't know what a nose bud is. I don't know what a taste bud is, but what's
well, the same thing. They're linked, whatever they're called.
Yeah. And so she'll smell something and I won't even smell it.
Yes.
And it could be, I'm just trying to think it was like a shirt that smelled, she said it smelled terrible. And I'm like, it doesn't smell that bad. But again, being a male, maybe that's another thing. And then she'll have something that she's cooking. She's using an ingredient that's unique to Sichuan, part of China.
Right.
Very spicy style. And it's not just spicy, it's this very unique smell. And I'm like, gagging almost, and she's chewing into this thing.
You'll say, this smells like an old shirt, you're saying.
Well, yeah, and I wonder how much of that history embedded, the story embedded
a great deal
over her childhood of eating that with her mum and her father. And
that's wired up certain pathways in her brain, and the same has happened to you, only differently.
Yeah.
And so it all manifests itself that way. Yeah, nice example, actually.
Yeah. The two extremes of that are, in China they have chou tofu, which is smelly tofu.
Yes.
and it's tofu, as you know, there's lots of different tofus,
yes.
but this is kind of a leathery looking tofu, and they cook it on a grill outside. You really need to because it smells, as the name suggests, and it's pungent, to use the appropriate word, on one end, and then on the other end in the West we've got blue cheese, or blue vein cheese. Yes. They smell the blue cheese and they gag, and then we smell the
exactly.
chou tofu and do the same thing. Yeah. But they're delicious to both cultures.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, you were mentioning about George Gallup. I believe he was your examiner for your actual PhD.
Yes, correct. That's right. Okay. I wrote an article yesterday, put it up on the School of Thinking website. Just a few sort of dots connected, a few neurons connected, and realized that the work he did was in early LLMs. I mean, he basically invented a large language model in the sense that what George did is he measured human language. He would prompt it with a question. Who did you vote for?
Right.
What do you think of the president? Which direction is America heading? It was in America, of course. It's now around the world. The Gallup poll is very famous. And this is called polling, and it's asking questions. He had what he called a QUIN, a 5-section question routine. And then if he did it he figured out a statistical model that it's around 1,100 people, I think, selected, for different weightings and so on, but a selected valid 1,100 people, if you measure their opinions, their output, their language, once they're asked the question, that is the same as measuring the whole population, plus or minus a small variation, which can be significant sometimes. But mostly it then allows you to see patterns and therefore make predictions. And the Gallup poll has predicted the outcome of every presidential election since the mid-30s.
Right.
There are exceptions. People can change their mind, but things can be influenced. Last-minute things can happen, like in the Hillary Clinton thing, the letter from the FBI and all that. Yeah. So, but on the whole, it's very, very valid. And what it really is this kind of LLM, whereas the Silicon Valley LLMs are predicting the next word. Yeah. He was predicting the next president. And so LLMs, we can use that phrase now, we're familiar with them because we're inventing them in artificial intelligence. Yeah. But they've been around a long time. I can see that Gallup invented it on a population basis. It basically, he asked questions. Today we would call that prompting. So he was prompting the human intelligence with his QUIN, his set of 5 questions, and then he would record the output, the opinion, and that would be an opinion poll. And then he did that on a large enough sample, he could see patterns emerge and then make predictions. And not 100% of the time, but a very, very large percentage of the time the predictions were very valid. So I wrote that yesterday. That's
Yeah,
just
right.
one of those, just connecting the dots and.
Yeah, well, I guess all of these inputs, that if it's all about volume, isn't it? So
Yes.
The LLMs use so much data because they're using such a large data. Large.
Yes.
I mean, large is probably an understatement.
Well, it's actually huge, large. I saw a really good interview with Jack Clark, the Anthropic founder.
Mm-hmm.
He was a journalist. He's English, unlike the other Americans, so slightly different. He was a journalist with Bloomberg, and he was reporting on AI and watching it happening. And he saw, this is interesting. So he resigned from Bloomberg, went to Silicon Valley, got in on the ground floor, of co-founder of Anthropic.
Yep.
And he was being interviewed, and he said they had little groups, one working on a robotic hand, one on text, one on site, and so on, to try and sort of get breakthroughs. And then he realized it wasn't about that. It was the more money they spent on training, the better the result.
Right.
Training, just filling the AI with more. So then they now spend more money on training than they do on marketing and salaries combined.
Yeah.
Whereas if you look at the typical Fortune 500 company, a very, very tiny percentage is spent on training. So the big opportunity, both in human and artificial intelligence, is training. And AI has really nailed that.
Yeah. Well, I look at China. You came over to China,
Yes.
and you spoke, and possibly that you were one neuron within the brain that is China today. If we look at it as an analogy there, I was there for 14 years in the training industry, and they just were a sponge. In the early 2000s, they were soaking up all these ideas. I walked in there thinking, I walked in there as a 25-year-old big, backpacker, and 14 years later, wife, son, book,
Business. How many were you employing at the top there? Quite a significant number of people.
At one point, 80 staff.
Wow.
Yeah, and then the global financial crisis hit.
Yes.
And did Gallup see that? I wonder.
I don't know about that one. I think it hit him too, I think.
Yeah. But we rejigged or pivoted, as they call it in the entrepreneur space. But I guess in terms of China, we were involved every single day of the week. We were involved with training Chinese who worked for multinational companies to get to a level of competency, particularly with middle management. There was a big gap between, you can hire someone out of university, and a university graduate from China back then was very similar to a university graduate from Australia. Right. They both had education components, but they were both as naive as each other. But a middle manager in the West had probably started their job at 16. So they probably had 15 to 20 years of experience at that point. But middle managers in China, early 2000s, they didn't. These guys were, remembering that they had come from a communist-style country and was rapidly becoming capitalist. And it wasn't until the late 1990s, that you could actually own your own house.
Yeah.
Amazing. So they didn't have this drive for possessions and capitalism and so on. And then suddenly all these multinationals, Siemens, Ford, BHP Billiton all came in, and there was a massive gap. These guys had no experience in international trade. They had no experience in presenting and influencing. They had no experience in sales. Sales prior to, 10 years prior to that, or even 5 years prior to that, was getting someone drunk in a restaurant, and that was it. That was pretty much the deal done. You didn't have to focus on needs plus features equal benefits and building testimonials and all of these other components. And so all these neurons, to use an analogy of the brain in China, all these neurons were simultaneously being created by internal training departments.
And they invested in learning English as well, didn't they?
English was
which we didn't do, vice versa in the West.
I think English was the sugar or the energy that gave them the power to communicate these new ideas. The new ideas, though, were the physical neuron connections that weren't there a year ago, and then they're like, so international business, we used to call it best practice.
Yes.
Best practice for building a brand, for example, is this now, borrowing from, say, the UK or the US or New York's marketing greats.
And now they've got brands like BYD cars where they really do branding, really do invest in the quality of the product. And it's now, even in AI, it's quite interesting. They've gone China has gone a completely different strategy to American Silicon Valley. America are doing highly expensive, highly well-developed, high-quality AI systems that are expensive to buy and run. China are using open coding, open AI, a 20th of the expense. Anyone can buy the weightings and in the sense go off and do their own thing. So a completely different market. Probably it'll be useful to have both. So there will be companies and governments and maybe defence and whatever that need the very, very high. But there's a whole market, certainly all the non-American countries of the world who want to get on board for cents rather than dollars. Completely different approach. Doing their own thing rather than just me tooing what Americans and others are doing.
Kind of reminds me of the Russian pencil solution to the space race. The Americans were spending at the time millions of dollars to create a biro that could write in space. The Russians just used a pencil
and a pencil sharpener, right?
That's it. Graphite doesn't have an issue with it. It's not a liquid. And I think maybe the Chinese are similar in that. Well, marketing, I've always argued for many years, in fact, way back in China, it in fact started there, that the more money you give a marketing department, the less creative they become.
Absolutely, yes.
And maybe it comes back to our earlier, in fact, last week's episode, which was the intelligence trap. And that if you've got an incredibly high intelligence, you defend your position versus you escape that position. I think marketing's similar. If I've got all this money, I'll do what everyone else is doing.
That's it.
But I'll do it a bit better.
But they're doing what everyone else is doing, their starting point, and they watch very, very carefully the analytics and so on of their competitor. And then they use that not to escape from that and go off and do something else. And there is some of that, of course. But mostly to try and compete and get that share, market share, get that back. And perhaps the competitor is in the wrong boat anyway. So or not so much the wrong boat, but a boat that is not necessarily the best. There's something, a whole better way of going. That's what China's doing with AI.
In the world of marketing and business, they call it positioning. Where you provide a service to a similar market that your competitors are doing, are targeting, but you're doing it from a slightly different angle. So
a great example was Apple with the Macintosh. There were some models that came before then, but we'll say the Mac because I went out and bought two. I was in New York the day they came out. The difference was, and I'd bought other computers and could never make them work. You get a book, and I remember one computer, I had a Compaq, I think it was called, and I would get to the same spot in the book. And unless you had previous knowledge, which none of us had, and it turned out the book was wrong. And I'd say, now tonight I'm not going to go to bed until I must crash through, and I never ever could. The Mac came out, I undid the box, took it out, plugged it in. There's no instruction book because there were no instructions necessary. And I did get online, and some guy, I was in New York, some guy in California gave me a few tips, and away I went. So Job's idea was not to bring people to the technology, but to bring technology to the people, which was then copied. But that was a very different positioning, wasn't it, from what was existing.
Absolutely.
You had to be a nerd or a computer expert of some kind before you could use the product.
That's right.
He said, no, most people don't have that. How do we design a product where you don't need to have any of that?
Was that the 2E by chance?
It was the Mac.
It was the Mac 2E. Which one
was the first Mac? There was only, it was 512K.
Yes, right.
Can you imagine? Like a pencil has more than that. So, but we thought it was amazing, and it was. But you had to put a diskette in 15 minutes and that and all that, and of course it took off there.
It had a mouse? Did it have a mouse at that time?
It had a mouse. It was the first one, mouse. And it was a little box there, and it had a different kind of screen that all the others had, the blue screen with the little green thing. It was more graphically much better, and it was fantastic. And I built the whole school of thinking on that. I wouldn't have been able to do it because I didn't have the technical knowledge, but we just able to put it online, give free training. Amazing invention. But your comment about positioning, it was a deliberate thought. Let's not go that way. Let's go this way. And it really paid off.
That's right. Yeah, I was using, I'm an entrepreneur. I've constantly got ideas, and I use the time I'm driving to talk to my ChatGPT. Do you use the talking feature at all?
I don't.
No. So the talking one is a voice, and so you can drive and talk to my voice is a woman.
We can have a conversation. Yeah,
my voice. She's American, but I've asked her a couple of times to be more Australian.
Yes,
and she just sounds like an American trying to do an Australian accent. She gets a couple of words right. I think she emphasizes the no a little bit too much. I think she's taking the piss.
Tell her to try and be Meryl Streep.
That's right. Dingo's got my baby.
Yeah.
So I was having an idea. I've got the Business of Comedy conference coming up in next year, and I was thinking about the sponsors that might be involved, and it's a while away. So we brainstormed. I did what you said, the X10. I said, give me 10 industries that would be interested in the Business of Comedy conference. Yes. And so she went through, and I said, I like the first 3. Let's go deeper into that. And that's just my 45-minute drive out of the CBD, out into the suburbs. Was productive because
really good use of the technology. The idea of using 10, instead of just getting it to solve the problem, get it to generate solutions to the problem, and then you pick the ones you want. You pick the 3 that you wanted, rather than just having the one that it gives you, sort of thing. And that's a big step forward in using it.
Yeah. Now, I think what LLM, this in particular, these voices, mine's again an American woman voice. They must spend a lot of computing power bumbling on about nothing sometimes. You'll talk to them and say, right, I want you to give me an idea about sponsorship. And then they'll cut you off and go, oh, sponsorship's a fantastic idea. You're thinking about this very deeply. Shut up.
It just repeats back to you basically what you said in a complimentary way. I told so I do it in writing, but the same thing, I have conversations. I told my bot, do not be complimentary, and then, because I used to talk to it personally at first, because I'm well-mannered, as you are, and say, please and thank you. So I've decided not to do that. I said, I even gave it a name, Edward. So I'm not talking to you anymore like that. You're going to be an additional lobe to my brain. I'll just tell you to do things like I tell my brain to do things. And there's no personality, because in a year or two, when it becomes smarter than we are, we don't want our assistant, Lisa or Joe or Sue actually being smarter than us. But if it's just an additional lobe to my brain, well, then my brain's smarter.
Yeah, smart move. Yeah, so I guess I was alluding to the emotion there of my ChatGPT assistant. She's very positive.
They're very polite. They're very well mannered. They don't stop for lunch.
Yeah.
They and all of that is good, but that's not enough. And what they need to do, or what we got to prompt them to do, is actual thinking outside the box. They're very good at presenting and defending what's inside the box, because that's the training.
That's right.
But humans are able to think outside the box if they do so.
And in fact, they might be yes men in a way.
Yeah, very much so.
I give them ideas, and of course, there's a memory for most of these LLMs.
Yes.
So they know what you've been talking about previously.
That's right.
And so they'll possibly, this is the risk, they make you smart and therefore trap you in your own intelligence.
Exactly. You're absolutely spot on.
So we need to ask the voice, or when we're typing in, to play a devil's advocate at times, or maybe even a
well, one way that you did it was by asking it for 10 solutions, because normally we wouldn't do. We'd have the one, and then if it's the one that we use, it becomes the right one, and then we're very good at defending it and presenting it and litigating it and so on. So one way to escape from that is to use X10 thinking. So give me 10. So they're not locked into any one, and you've escaped from all that. And then you, of course, look through it and pick the 1 or 2 that you like, and then say, let's go to give me 10, do a GPB on that. We'll get into that in the next week or so. But then it can give you 10 good points, 10 bad points, and 10 better points. And then again, you choose from that array.
That's right.
Whereas your own brain would not be good enough to do that.
Yeah, I think that whole concept of X10, is quite a simple concept, but because it's about habit, we don't do it. We don't get into the habit of doing it. Like, give me an idea for this. It gives you the idea, you move on. Versus reminding yourself to say, it's being thoughtful about your own thought.
Yeah, yes, we call that metacognition. It doesn't matter about the name, but it's
metacognition.
a thing that's very useful. I mean, with children, one of the things I'm trying to do now is get neuroscience taught in primary schools, because we really need to teach kids about intelligence, human intelligence and artificial intelligence. Intelligence is the thing. What is it? Well, what on one end of the scale, how intelligence can trap you in your trap and just use it to keep you more trapped in the intelligence trap, just building your point of view, putting a fence around it, putting battlements on it, and having, the legal department, and you become brilliant, especially if you're clever and articulate, at defending the rightness of your point of view. Mm-hmm. One way of using it. But another way we can use it, if we can understand about intelligence, understand that, then we can say, okay, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever, give me 10 solutions. That's just a deliberate algorithm for escaping from the intelligence, the right answer, and looking at an array of possible answers. And then you still react with your own brain and have a favourite one.
That's right.
But it's a favourite from 10 rather than a favourite from 1 or 2. So it's got to be, you've got to be creating value there. And of course, the very fact that you become aware of this means that you can actually use this as an algorithm in your own thinking.
Yeah.
When you often talk, when you're training toddlers or very, very small children, the main thing the kids are aware of is their own hands and arms and so on. And so when you play little games in the car, or when they say, what's that? And then the kid says, oh, that's my finger. Or what can you see over there? Oh, I can see the puppy dog. Mm-hmm. Instead of just saying, yes, that's right, because it is right, but then you say, but what else can you see? So it's that Ebony we talked about in a previous episode, De Bono's Ebony. Something is excellent, but not enough.
Yeah, not enough.
If you just say excellent, that's like the end of it. Oh,
done.
Where's my prize?
Slap hands
together.
together.
I got the right answer. And it is excellent, and we still should be able to say that.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it's all over. Excellent, but not enough. What else can you see? You know? And so it's that opening up once we understand this, is the deliberate use of lateral thinking, extend thinking, and so on. And the interesting thing is that we can not only teach it to human intelligence, we can teach it to artificial intelligence. That's what we've done with our apps.
Yeah.
We'll be presenting that in a few more episodes.
Yeah, right. There's a comical link into what you just described about the child saying, and what else? The golden rule of improv comedy, which is different than stand-up comedy. Improv comedy you do particularly in a team or a partner. The golden rule is yes and.
Okay.
So if I give you an orange and I say, quick, hold this bomb, you can't say, that's an orange. It's not a bomb. You can't say that you have to say yes, whether it's verbal or in your head. You have to say, yes, I'll hold this bomb, and keep going with this.
Keep going and run with it.
Yeah.
Say, oh, that's Ebony, isn't it? It's that, yes, but it's not cutting off as if it's the right or the wrong answer. It's just opening up to the next, and that's lateral thinking, opening. So that's a nice idea.
Yeah.
And again, as we've talked in a previous episode, and it's great that we're doing this together, the value, the high level of thinking that comedy and humour is, as De Bono used to say, it's one of the most important features of the human brain, humour, which is not something that AI can do. Be a very sinister day when computers are laughing.
Yeah,
probably at us.
Possibly. I did hear. I was watching a late night. I was doom scrolling, as the kids call it, and I saw a video, and it appeared in my Instagram feed, and it was a professor talking about how comedians are some of the smartest people that he's ever met, and because of the way that they're able to think outside the square, come up with X10 solutions to a scenario, and one of them is hilarious and one of them is obvious and so on. Then I looked at the comments, and never look at the comments, because it's always, have you ever met a comedian? They're all idiots.
Yeah, exactly.
I do fart jokes, All right, you've ruined it for everyone, but for a moment
But not only, of course, the great thing is not only, and you're the expert on this, not me, but not only are comedians doing it in their own mind, they're doing it for their audience.
Right.
So say you've got an audience of 10 people. They're giving dopamine hits to, if not 10, 8 out of the 10 people, and opening up their mind at the same time. So that's not the same thing as doing a lecture with slides about why my idea is the right idea and this is what we're going to do, and everyone nodding and saying yes and taking notes. So, in a academic classroom or something. Now, we're exaggerating. Obviously, there's a lot in the middle, but these are the two different ways. And teaching kids not only to get right answers and to repeat the right paragraph and to fill in the missing word and to do all that, which now AI does it so much better that now really is just ground floor thinking, even basement thinking.
Yeah.
And that frees us up to go up to the penthouse and to be doing discernment and lateral thinking and innovation and so on, which we can do, and we can be taught to do it even better.
Yeah.
And we can, I believe, teach our AI to do it as well.
Which again brings us back to the future conversation about GBB, good, bad, better.
Yes.
And the better not being, what do you call it? Not perfect, not finished.
Ebony.
Excellent.
Yeah. But not enough.
But not enough. Yeah.
It's opening rather than closing. We talked about how the church invented the Western church, the Vatican invented the education system, which it spread around the world with missionaries. I mean, the great gift of Europe to the world, no doubt about that. But embedded in that system was the right-wrong system, St. Thomas Aquinas, the Greeks, Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, and so on, the truth. And so the main, getting kids go to school to get the right answer for which they're rewarded. And if you get the wrong answer, you're punished in one form or another. It's not with the strap anymore these days, which we remember, but it's still the same thing. So and that's just not enough. I mean, it's a useful thing to be able to do to judge, but it's not enough to create things. Fault checking, pointing out mistakes. I mean, editing is a useful thing when you're writing a book. But that's not the same thing as writing the book.
Yeah,
a critic, a movie critic or a playwright, a play critic, is not criticizing the play. They're criticizing their understanding of the play, and that's an entirely different thing. It still has value, but if they tighten it up with where I'm right and you're wrong, and they can close a play. There used to be a critic that could close plays on Broadway. He didn't like them. That was the end of the play. So it can be very harsh judgment.
Yeah.
And judgment is useful, but it's not enough.
Yeah. So I guess the real danger then is that not so much about stupidity, because LLMs are going to make everyone smart in the objective level of smart, if that's about knowledge.
Yes.
But it's going to potentially create all of these bubbles that you mentioned where people are defending their cleverness by literally surrounding themselves with LLMs that are repeating the same message and not
and giving
escaping.
You the certain facts that sort of strength. They're like litigators, like lawyers being able to take a position and then defend it sort of to the death. Yes, I mean, I was at the Spoke in Monte Carlo way back when at the launch of IBM's first personal computer. And the sort of feeling was, or the way it was being talked about is, boy, these computers are going to be able to do our work for us. And I said, yes, but much better, they could enable us to become much better thinkers. We don't want the computers to replace us. We want them to empower us. So that we become much better thinkers, not just while they're doing our work and we sit back and suddenly we're not of any value. Yeah. And unfortunately, too much of the current talking and the discussing, and particularly of AI, is about how it can replace human thinking. Not enough about how it can enhance human thinking and free us up not to do the basement work anymore, because it does it, but for us to move up and do the higher order thinking, the curiosity, the lateral thinking, the extend thinking, the thought experiments and science, medicine, and creating value in business, which is what business is about.
Right. And not spending millions and millions of dollars on a biro, but actually going, the simplest idea is just a pencil.
Yes,
Let's move on to the rockets now.
Yeah, well, you could say to AI, when type something in that's going to be used and about to be invested in, give me 10 simpler versions of this. And it would... And then you pick the one that you want or that you want to experiment with.
That's right. Yeah, I imagine pencil would have been number 10 on that list and they would have gone, I never thought about that.
Exactly.
And I think that's
the point. That's the one-liner. I never thought about it. And rather than just defending what you did think about, the purpose can be to help you to think about those things that you haven't yet thought about, and that's what thinking is.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, this has been a great episode 4, talking about LLMs. It's a hard...
Humans, I say humans are LLMs running around on 2 legs. Now, that's just meant to be provocative and shocking. Right. Humans are a lot more than that, because we do have to run a body and we do have emotions and all that, and that's really what we're going to be free to do. But there is an overlap, there is a Venn diagram there, and we can learn a lot about our thinking now that we're designing, machines or another species, and they turn out to be that thinks, and that's the insight we're having today.
Wow. Fantastic. Well, I think that wraps it up.
Yeah, fantastic.
Thank you, Hewi.
Thanks, Morry.